Cougar Sports Saturday.
It's complete and another touchdown!
Cougar Sports Saturday. A presentation of KSL Sports.
Left wing for three. He got it again!
BYU Sports Talk by Cougar fans for Cougar fans. Here are your hosts, Mitch Harper and Matt Baiamonte. On Utah's legacy home of the Cougars. KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM and 1160 AM.
Welcome back in. Happy mid-June, the 14th. Some big recruiting weekends coming up, too. So, Matt, June is football all steam ahead. I'm sure we'll touch on that at some point. It's always fun to talk recruiting. But we did get a piece of news from the Big 12 related to basketball. They announced the scheduling matrix for the 2025-2026 season. We don't have the dates yet, but we know where they will be going on the road, who's going to be coming to Provo, and who the three teams are that you will see at home and on the road. What'd you make of this matrix reveal for BYU, Mitch?
Biggest takeaway was the home and away teams. So last year, it was a 20-game Big 12 schedule. They're scaling it back. It's going to be 18 games with a 16-team league, year two of the 16-team iteration of the Big 12. So that means only 3 teams in league play BYU will face twice, one of which is going to be Utah. We know that. That's what it is. Home and away with the Utes, rivalry. The other two were interesting to me, Matt. Arizona and Texas Tech. Arizona, are they trying to create some sort of rivalry right there? Back-to-back years of home and away between BYU and Arizona. Geography is a big piece. You know, you want to try to mitigate as much excessive travel as possible. I thought that caught my attention. And then Texas Tech, possible top 10 team. BYU has yet to beat the Red Raiders in 2 years as a member of the Big 12. So that's a tough 6 games right there. But I thought that was interesting that they're trying to maybe create something with BYU and Arizona, because last year that Tucson game, of course, had the chant at the end of the game from Arizona fans. Amazing game for BYU. So maybe they're trying to generate some real interest there.
I thought it was a tough draw for BYU, quite honestly. You mentioned those home and aways. Utah basketball has been bad for quite a while, but that doesn't mean that the game's not hard. To your point,
Huntsman Center's always tough.
Yeah, exactly. So you can't just pencil in 2 wins there. And then Arizona and Tech are 2 of the 5 best teams in the Big 12. And then I look at the road schedule. It is daunting, dude. Cincinnati, they lost handily at Cincinnati last year. They go back to Cincinnati at Kansas. That's going to be tough. And I know that there's quite a bit of turnover on that Jayhawk team, but you got to believe they're going to be motivated for that one after what BYU did to them in Provo last year. Kansas State, I think, is a hard place to play. West Virginia is a hard place to play. I do think West Virginia is not great.
3 years in a row, BYU's going to Morgantown. That seems a bit much.
100%. Absolutely, I think it's a bit much.
They're going to that East Coast outpost 3 straight years. I know that the first year in the league was kind of just a one-off because it was a 14 team with Texas and Oklahoma, but back-to-back years, that seems a bit excessive.
Their road schedule for road teams only. So take out the Arizona, take out the Tech, take out the Utah. If you just look at the home and road, their road to me is harder than home.
No question.
I mean, yes, Houston coming to the Marriott Center, insanely difficult. Iowa State, that's a good basketball team. But then you look at ASU, bad. Colorado, bad. TCU, beatable. UCF, bad. I think you could go 5-1 at home in those home-only games. But the road schedule, even Baylor, we don't know. But history would say Scott Drew's a dang good coach, and they'll figure something out.
Well, and just the emotion, too. That fan base is going to be jacked out of their mind to bring back Rob Wright into Foster Pavilion, and that's going to be it's going to be a highly watched game, I think, for the Baylor hits in BYU fan bases. And that Baylor program, regardless of what their record is, they are going to be hyped up to welcome back Rob Wright because they felt that he left them kind of high and dry, and that's why some like the whole guardrails with revenue sharing, as we were talking about earlier. But that will be a really good game. And you look at those away-only games, Baylor, Cincinnati, Kansas, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, West Virginia. Kansas, they're undefeated, which is weird to say, 1-0 in Allen Fieldhouse, 2-0 against the Jayhawks. But Kansas and West Virginia are the only buildings BYU has won in since being in the Big 12. Now, KY didn't coach that first year, but they lost at Baylor 2 years ago, lost at K-State, lost at Oklahoma State. So any road game in the Big 12 is going to be a tough one. This league should be, I think, better again. I did believe that last year and thought there was a little bit of a step back, only 7 bids compared to the SEC having 14, but it's a tough schedule. I do think, though, what's nice, though, is BYU, personnel-wise, talent-wise, they got all the pieces necessary to have a lot of success. And Kevin Young was on the KSL Sports Zone, our sibling station, earlier this week with Hans and Scotty G. He shared his thoughts on the schedule matrix and the new 18-game schedule.
Honestly, I'm still learning so much about college basketball. It's hard for me to have super strong opinions on stuff that's super new for me. We'll see. I think the jury's still out on what that's going to mean when we get to March as it relates to seeds and stuff like that. And so, I'm very much in learn mode still. The thing I do know is that we want to play good teams and beat them, obviously, and the Big 12 affords you that opportunity, every time you go out in a Big 12 game. So when you take 2 of those games away, I think adding, some quad 1 type opponents in those particular 2 voids made sense. And, like I said, we'll see where it shakes out in terms of if it's good or bad for us.
One thing I do believe that, to Kevin Young's commentary, BYU's strength of schedule should be really good going into March next year. There will be no questions about.
It's got to be top 50, right?
I think this could be, if some of these teams hit like we project they to be, like a Villanova or UConn or Clemson, you're talking top 25 strength of schedule. And as long as you get to at least, I'd say, 23-8, you could be in play for a top 16 seed. And I think that the makeup of BYU's roster from a talent perspective, and then you pair it up with the advanced metrics and the resume, if, again, assuming what BYU could potentially be, it should put them in a better place to get the best possible seed. And I think Kevin Young learned that, this past March. Even though it was great to get to the Sweet 16, you had to go through a very tough road to get there. A good VCU team, a 3-seed Wisconsin at an All-American, and then you played Bama. That's 3 really tough games where if you're a 1-seed, you're a 2-seed, maybe that round of 64 game is pretty light. There's always that upset, but last year it was a chalky tournament. Maybe that's where we're going to get to in the sport where a lot of it's chalky, and, BYU could get to not breaking a real sweat until that regional semifinal, and then you're in a position to really get to that Final Four for the first time ever.
What was your just gut reaction, way too early conference record when you saw that?
13-5 was my thought, just, again, without knowing the sequencing of how that will come to be. Typically the Big 12 releases the actual dates with the schedule around September. So if they follow that similar timeline, we're about 2 or 3 months away. 13-5 would be my thought. You got to think that there's going to be maybe a home game you're going to lose. You hope that you can win every game at home, and that home slate includes Houston, who could be the number 1 team in the country once again, coming off a national championship game appearance last season. But 13-5, and I think that's not a bad thing. You hear that record in the WCC era, and you say, well, let down season. But 13-5 is really good in the Big 12, especially if they put together a good record with their non-conference schedule, which is going to be tough.
I had the same thought as you, 13-5. I feel like you split Arizona and Tech. I think you lose to Kansas on the road, maybe Kansas State on the road, and then drop a home game too. Probably Houston if you had to guess. So 13-5 would be great though. And to me, the key to getting a good seed, conference play is important, but you really need to show out in the non-conference.
Yes.
If you can have 2 of 3 wins against Villanova, Clemson, and UConn, I think you're going to be sitting great.
Wisconsin too.
Wisconsin too. I don't know how to project Wisconsin because losing Tangier is such a loss for the Badgers. It's hard to assume that they're going to be at the top of the Big Ten when you lose a player like that. Whereas BYU, they're All-American candidate. You retain him in Richie, and then you add. So I look at UConn and I just say they've won a couple national championships in the last couple years. Clemson, a bit of a projection, but that seems like a really talented team. Villanova, probably the easiest of those four. Who knows what Villanova is going to be? But hey, if you could just split those, you go 2-2 and then win a bunch of other games. Let's say you're going into conference play at 7-2 or 8-2 or something like that, and then you get to 13-5. That's how you get to the 22-8 number that you're talking about, to where I think you would be a top 4 seed.
Yeah, I think BYU's got everything in front of them. I love, when Kevin Young learns something, he's going to lean in and have a lot of success with it. Kevin Young's going to do some good things for this BYU basketball program, so they've already seen already, and he's only going to continue to go up. We'll have some more commentary from Kevin Young on the other side because there's new rules in college basketball. What are those? We'll hit on those next here on Cougar Sports Saturday.